I started working at a store called Paul's CDs when I was 17. Dave was somebody who, he also left Pittsburgh, not unlike Lavella, before I was totally around all the time. Like, we definitely saw each other in passing for a little while, but he moved to New York City before I was like coming to shows regularly or hanging out in record stores regularly. Out of high school, I wanted to get as far away from Pittsburgh as I could, or at least like philosophically farther away. So I wanted to go to New York City. I became Dave's intern at Matador Records. It was our job to go and do like display research. The idea was we were supposed to look and see how well displayed Matador product was, but we would just go through the store and just like put the records and CDs at the front of the bins that we thought should be there, even if they weren't in order. And so you'd be like, I'm gonna put like the Minutemen in the front of this bin, the Misfits, or then, you know, whatever, and we'd just like go and rearrange the record store. Eventually I came back to Pittsburgh and started working for Paul again at the record store.
When you meet a lot of people like at record stores, you can kind of learn to like form like closer friendships with them.
And I thought, I'm gonna open my own record store. I was talking to another good friend. Maybe you should call the store Mind Cure Records. It was just like a big part of local music, and whether it was Half-Life, or whether it was the Speaking Canaries, or whether it was the Carl Hendricks Trio records. That Brain logo is something that was just very imprinted in my mind from a young age. And I called Dave, and he was like, yeah, that sounds good. You gotta talk to Lavella though, where he was like, how much are you gonna pay me for it? And something like that. And then he was like, are you gonna fly me to Pittsburgh for the opening? And I was like, is this guy for real? June 13th, 2010, the doors to 3138 Dobson Street opened. And up till that point, I had been doing a record label that was called Deer Skull Records, and I was like, I'm done with putting out records. I can't do it. And I think I managed to make it 4 months before I was like, I want to put out records again. And still, like, for some reason, I was like, I'll merge Mind Cure and Deer Skull. And so I did this like one-off record on Mind Skull Records that was a Rat Face 7-inch. Jimmy was like, oh man, the record, it's slow. And I was like about to call the pressing plant. And I was like, you mean the record's slow, or like you wish it was faster? And he was like, no, it sounds like the recording, it's just I wish we would have played faster, like do you think we could fix it? And I was like, no, you can't fix it. And then actually Mike Lavella was in town. I wanted to restart Mind Cure Records, and I want it to be a reissue label. And I want to start with the Real Enemy cassette. You know, that was Mind Cure Records #1, and I think that'd be a great place to start. Like, what do you think?
It was never a record until he pressed up records 30 years later.
This is what I've always kind of wanted to do, is work with old Pittsburgh music and Pittsburgh bands.
Are you selling any?
Yeah, I sell them.
I was getting a little bit of flack from people like Dave Martin and Dan Allen, who were like, you can't just give up on new bands. Like, they were really bummed that I was not going to do new records anymore. And I'd had this idea for doing a single series,
A single month by a local band.
all the records have the same art, they have the same labels.
They came in like a generic company sleeve. That was the thing I really liked about it. Like, there was an aesthetic to it.
It's an original, it's a cover.
When bands start out, it's cool whenever you can self-release something, but it's also cool when you can work with someone you really like.
It seemed like a cool way to like highlight some bands.
It's cool to be part of like the Mind Cure lineage.
To be the person who's like the first one to say like, I take this band seriously enough that I'll put up, you know, a chunk of money and put out a record for them.
When you have something it makes more sense to play out with, then you can trade with people.
If I do that, then somebody else will pay attention and be like, someone put up money to do a record for this band.
And other people seem to take it more seriously. And that's when we played Go to Bed's played a WFMU session, and that was kind of what got the ball rolling.
It has helped put it on the radar of the rest of the country. There's another Go to Bed's record.
When you decided to put that single out, things just like kind of kept happening for us.
There's actually 2 more Eel records. A fundraising record we did with the Beagle Brothers. I have a record coming out by this band, The Six, who I'm really psyched about. Other than that, it's mainly just been the reissues.
Someone like Mike has archived it and kept putting it out when no one else would.
The original things that had come out on Mind Cure, like, you know, the Real Enemy, the Savage Amuse, Battered Citizens. The split record I did with AF, the first Modi Lemon release, and that was the most contemporary reissue that I've done. Then there was the Bats record. Over the years, I remember hearing about it. It was this rumored recording.
There's one lone photo of the band.
And finally I just talked to them and I said, like, really, like, what do you think? Like, do you think we could do this?
Michael Chabon, who initially was the reticent one to want to have it reissued. He's missing from the photograph, and there's a paper clip over top of like where he would be.
Finally just really approaching people and saying like, hey, we want to do this record. Like, what's it going to take to make this happen? And I was kind of rummaging around and came across this record by Billy Synth and the Turn Up.
From his pictures, there's pictures of him biting records. He just seemed like a wild man.
How have I never heard about this? And you know, I called Dave Martin. I was like, I think I want to do this record. I was like, it's not from Pittsburgh. And he was like, go for it. Mind Gear can, you know, roughly only be like a regional label now that I did a record with someone from Harrisburg, the state capital.
I just think that things like Mind Cure are really important for communities to help them keep growing.
I'm proud of where I'm from, and I want other people to, you know about stuff that happened here that has unfortunately stayed off of a larger national or international radar.